Hey everyone, for this week's discussion, I am going to be talking about Chapter 5's Individuals with Disabilities. And the case study that I am looking at is the Student with a Disability and Related Service. Basically, a parent asked for a private nurse to serve as a related service for their student, or their child, excuse me. And the student has multiple disabilities requiring constant care by a specially trained nurse. He's profoundly mentally disabled and has spastic quadriplegia and also a seizure disorder. The request was denied by the principal, and the first question is the principal's decision defensible? Why or why not? The first thing you have to look at when you're looking at a nurse as a related service is what the needs of the nurse are going to be completing when at school and how that time is going to be spent. With this case study, it's very vague. If you go off just the seizure disorder, then I think the principal did make the correct decision. A seizure disorder is something that teachers, special education teachers, can be trained to handle, and we're taught to administer emergency medication, what they look like, and etc. on that. So if you go off just the seizure disorder, yes, the principal did make the right decision. If there are, it kind of seems that there is more to his needs than just a seizure disorder, but without really going into that, then that's kind of like the gray area of the question is what is the nurse going to be doing? If a nurse is going to be administering oxygen or suctioning care that is so out of the hands of the teacher, then I think the principal made the wrong decision. But going off just what it says, the seizure disorder, then the principal made the right decision. Is the parent's request reasonable under the law? Yes, because a related service is defined as provided to allow the child with disabilities to benefit from special education. So again, if there were more severe um, things that need medical situations that the student had, then a nurse would be appropriate in allowing that child to benefit from special education. And really, a parent can come in and say, I want my child to have a nurse for whatever reason. And before a decision is made, there is usually already a protocol and plan of action in place of how to get that nurse. And I'm kind of jumping ahead to number 5, but it would be, what does that look like? What is your plan of action? I know in the county I teach in, for students to get kind of like a contracted nurse is they usually have to be on oxygen, they have to be on suctioning machines. There has to be a need so great out of the hands that a teacher, like that medical staff have to complete rather than the teacher for it to kind of get approved. So the parents are definitely in the right, but there's, data collection, doctor's notes. It's not a simple yes or no question. Is the provision of a nurse as a related service necessary for Jonathan to receive appropriate education? Again, it goes back to the gray area of the case study. A seizure disorder? No, he does not need a nurse to receive FAPE of a seizure disorder. That is a plan of action that the school system, that the classroom, working with the IEP team, can have in place for Jonathan to make sure he is safe, he is in the classroom doing what he needs to do and receiving the fullest extent of his education. If it goes beyond that, if his disability kind of impedes on his learning, and that two-step analysis of the related service, like if it's such a supportive service, like something he has to have to function, to do the daily living minimum at school, then yes, that does, without the nurse, that would hinder his education because he's not able to do it if he needs a ventilator and he needs someone to figure out his ventilation machine. And he can't come to school unless he has a nurse, then that's getting in the way of FAPE. If he has the nurse to take care of the ventilation, then there you go. Like, he's able to achieve all the appropriate education. How do I think a court would rule in this case? Again, I think you just need to know more about the case study. If it's going just off the seizure disorder, I think the courts would rule with the school system and saying that it's not appropriate, that what is in place will allow Jonathan to keep FAPE going in the positive direction. If there is more um, medical needs found, then I think it could go either way. And usually, I feel like the courts are always going to side with the safety of the kid. In this situation, providing, safety versus money. In my mind, it's saying you can't have them because they're so expensive, so you're putting the safety of a child at risk. So that's why I think the court would rule if there were more medical information given in the case study, kind of alluding to the fact that, this is a pretty severe case. Then I feel like they're going to side with that. What are the administrative implications of this case? I've kind of already touched on it, but I think it's about having a protocol of what is defined as having a nurse. When parents, have that conversation, can you direct them to someone who knows the answers? I know in my county district, we don't make that decision. That's kind of at the county head, special ed and related service division, where they go talk to someone and the paperwork kind of starts. And then there should also be data collection, like how many times is this medical situation getting in the way of his education? What do doctor's notes say? What does his IEP say? Or what does his 504, whatever plan he have, say that will help or not help get a nurse? So it's all about, you as principals, we think of the budget in the back of our heads. But when it comes down to safety of a child, we need to be as thorough as we can, because yes, it is an extraordinary amount of money that goes to this contracted nurse related service, but it's also the safety and well-being of a child. So I think it's data collection, creating step analysis for parents and teachers to kind of discuss, like, what does a nurse do that is out of the hands of the teacher, because the last paragraph on 135 is school districts will be required to provide simple medical procedures under the category of related services when such procedures do not require complex mastery and the services are necessary for the child's benefit from an appropriate special education program. So looking at what are we allowing our teachers to do with their teaching degree, and what we're allowing our the nurses to do. Like, what is that line? And having that line drawn out, I think, is a very good way to start to kind of guide that question of, does your child need a nurse, or can the teacher handle it? I'm a special education teacher. I have this discussion a lot. And what I'm allowed to do, I never thought I would be allowed to do when I was in college, learning about special education. And then what our nurses do. And it is a very gray line, but defining that line as much as we can is a really good place to start. So